Quick disclaimer. Information in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended to be treated as medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare team before making changes to your diet, lifestyle, supplementation, or medication.
The global diabetes epidemic, metformin timing, World Health Organization warnings, high cortisol, emulsifiers, flavonoids, healthy diets, environmental factors, and surfing the Wild West Web. There's a lot in store for today's episode, so let's dive in.
Welcome to Type 2 Diabetes Talk, the place where we chat about what really works to treat type 2 diabetes and prediabetes naturally with nutrition and lifestyle. If you're looking to optimize blood sugar and A1C, lose weight, reduce medications, and improve your overall health, this is the place to be. Now, here's your host, Type 2 Diabetes Nutrition Specialist, Dr. Jetta.
Hello there, Dr. Jetta here, and thanks for tuning in to episode 43. Over the past couple of months, I've been gathering together some headlines, highlights, research bites, and bits to share. So today we'll be covering a mix mash of topics from global diabetes statistics and World Health Organization warnings to research bites about metformin timing, high cortisol and high blood sugar, emulsifiers, flavonoids, foods, healthy diets, along with our environment and BPA in plastic bottles and cautions around surfing the Wild West Web. First, let's dig into some sobering statistics. Globally, we're facing major health issues, and in particular, headlines across the globe have emphasised the global diabetes epidemic continues to grow out of control. The FDA Commissioner publicly stated the United States is failing diabetes. The latest US data has shown a 19% increase in diabetes prevalence over the past decade. In the US, there are approximately 34 million people living with type 2 diabetes, 98 million living with prediabetes, and approximately 8.7 million people undiagnosed. The UK noted an 18% rise in cases of prediabetes in just 1 year, placing people at high risk of getting type 2 diabetes. 21% increase in type 2 diabetes cases, at least 1.2 million undiagnosed. In the UK, there are approximately 4 million people living with type 2 diabetes and over 3.6 million living with prediabetes. Australia also revealed alarming statistics with rates of type 2 diabetes tripling over the past 3 decades and at least 500,000 undiagnosed cases. In Australia, there are approximately 1.3 million people living with type 2 diabetes and 2 million people living with prediabetes. In Canada, stats are sitting around 3.2 million with type 2 diabetes, 6 million with prediabetes, another million more undiagnosed, with a 26% increase in cases expected in the next decade. Most disturbingly is the increased rates we're seeing in younger people. And we're primarily talking about type 2 diabetes, as this is the most common type. Way back when, diabetes was seen as adult onset diabetes. It was only really seen in people over 40, but these alarming statistics in younger people are beginning to get quite concerning. In the UK, there's been a 25% increase in the number of people under 40 with prediabetes and a 40% rise in type 2 diabetes diagnosis in younger people. In Australia, the past decade has seen a 44% increase in people between 21 to 39 years and 17% rise in those under 21 years. In the US, we've seen an increase of 500,000 diagnosed cases in 18 to 44-year-olds and an estimated few 100,000 more undiagnosed. And the trends in type 2 diabetes in children and adolescents from 10 to 19 years in the US, well, those rates are increasing as well. So to say we have an issue is really an understatement. Interestingly, type 2 diabetes was listed as the world's most studied diseases this year, It now ranks 5th in terms of the number of clinical trials underway, with cancer research leading the top 4 categories. One of the primary things driving this increased research has been the surge in GLP-1 drugs for treating diabetes and obesity. We're talking Ozempic and Wegovy. There was an interesting article I read about the billions of dollars being made by pharmaceutical companies in the US for non-insulin therapies for diabetes. $31.8 billion in 2023 to be precise, with an estimate of $33.6 billion in 2024. And in another decade, that number is set to rise another 5.8%, up to $58.6 billion. There's about 10 different pharmaceutical companies providing these medications to people across the US, but it just goes to show how much of a fortune they are actually making over these medications and over-medicalising diabetes as a health condition as well. This is a global diabetes epidemic, and while medications may help, they are not really a solution to the problem. So the interesting thing is the percentage of people meeting goals for A1C levels under 7% along with normalising blood pressure and cholesterol is only sitting at around 11.1%. Out of all the millions of people living with diabetes, this is such a small percentage. And one of the primary issues we have worldwide is our diet and nutrition quality. More importantly, though, is 2 things. Number 1 is there has been widespread misinformation about diet and nutrition and what the right type of eating plan to change diabetes health should be. Unfortunately, this includes information that has come out of diabetes organisations for decades. And this is terrible, as we know people turn to places like the American Diabetes Association, Diabetes Canada or Diabetes Australia to get information, and they think it's the best information. Of course, why wouldn't you think that? As these organisations are supposedly the governing bodies of diabetes in that country. And in addition, their information is free, which is appealing. But that doesn't mean it's accurate or based on the best research, because as I said, unfortunately, there has historically been widespread misinformation about diet and nutrition and what the right type of eating plan to change diabetes health really looks like. The second issue is there just isn't enough support available. There's not enough workforce capacity to meet the demand. With 34 million people in the US living with type 2 diabetes, believe it or not, there are less than 5,000 endocrinologists who are meant to be specialists in this area. And this lack of workforce capacity is widespread, with limited health professionals across all areas. We're talking diabetes educators, physicians, and dietitians, among others. And it's an issue that's global as well. And that's where our online nutrition programs and services are helping to close the gap. I'm so proud to say we're part of the solution and can make a big impact on people's lives. So please share a link to our site on social media, recommend our site or our podcast to family, friends or colleagues. And if you're a regular listener of the podcast, please leave a rating on Apple, Spotify or over on our website, because this all really helps us reach more people, and the more people we can reach, the more lives we can impact and change for the better.
Get proven, practical support to lower blood sugar, weight, and medication. Check out Dr. Jetta's programs and services at type2diabetestalk.com/programs.
Moving on with the rest of today's episode, I have some research I've been collecting. Interesting new research I've read that I wanted to share with you. The first thing we're covering is the best time to take metformin. Metformin is one of the most commonly prescribed medications for managing both type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes. And a frequent question we get is, what is the best time to take metformin? Should it be before, with, or after meals? Traditionally, to minimise the gastrointestinal distress that can come alongside metformin, it's often recommended to take metformin with meals. And certainly, if you do have substantial gastrointestinal issues, that's probably a good strategy to follow. However, there is new research that suggests that the optimal time might actually be 30 to 60 minutes before meals. And in this study, they found that taking metformin before meals led to greater reductions in glucose levels and increased blood levels of GLP-1. Now, you might be thinking, isn't GLP-1 the name of a new medication? Well, actually, GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1, which is a hormone naturally produced in the body. It helps regulate blood sugar levels and appetite. And you're right, some diabetes medications, like those you might have heard of, Ozempic or Wegovy for example, mimic this hormone to help manage blood sugar more effectively or promote weight loss too. In any case, it's interesting that this new research showed that by taking metformin before meals, you might actually be enhancing your body's natural GLP-1 levels, leading to better blood sugar control, in addition to taking it at that time, that 30-60 minutes before meals, led to reductions in glucose levels greater than any other timing. Speaking of the popular drugs Ozempic and Wegovy, around the globe there has been a surging demand for these, and with that comes another major issue: counterfeit drugs. The World Health Organization issued a global critical warning about this counterfeit drug issue, with some drugs found to be falsely claiming to contain semaglutide, the active ingredient in diabetes drugs Ozempic and the weight loss treatment Wegovy. And according to WHO, those counterfeit versions have been found in Brazil, the UK and the US. So clearly this is of high concern for everyone around the globe, and something I wanted to highlight that you be aware of if you do take these medications. Another interesting little research bite was a new study about high levels of cortisol and how they may increase complications or make it difficult to regulate blood sugar. It's new data, so we certainly do need more research to truly establish this, but essentially, if you have been struggling to get your blood sugar levels under control, it could be due to high cortisol. Cortisol is our stress hormone, and when this is high, it elevates blood sugar levels. And the research in this study screened 1,000 people and found 24% of them had high cortisol. And even more interesting was that those who were taking multiple medications for high blood pressure had higher rates of high cortisol. They don't know whether this is stress-related or due to alterations in organs or something else even. For example, some people had abnormalities in the adrenal gland, and this is the gland that produces cortisol. As I said, this is very early data, so it'll be interesting to see if this evolves as more research is done. There was a study highlighting the potentially detrimental effects of common food additives in terms of risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And there's not too much research around specific additives, so I always find this research very interesting. Common emulsifiers with potentially detrimental effects included tripotassium phosphate, guar gum, xanthan gum, sodium citrate, gum arabic, and carrageenans. These might sound familiar, as you've probably seen them on food labels of common foods, like breads, cakes, biscuits, yogurt, ice cream, chocolate bars, margarines, ready-to-eat meals, and many other processed foods. So it was very interesting to see that there may be a connection with these common emulsifiers and risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And this is why we have such a focus on encouraging nutrient-dense, quality diets. Nutrient-dense diets, rich in vegetables, fibre, protein and healthy fats, provide vitamins, minerals and essential nutrients that are foundational for maintaining stable blood sugar levels, reducing cellular inflammation and optimizing metabolism. By focusing on consuming high-quality foods, we can avoid the pitfalls of ultra-processed foods to help mitigate metabolic disturbances and reduce risk of diabetes. And of course, to treat diabetes more effectively too. So always try to focus on eating whole, unprocessed foods as much as possible. Of course, it's logical and makes sense that a healthy eating plan supports better health. It's certainly been shown in ample research to support improved blood sugar, weight loss and reduced medications in those with type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes. But just to confirm this, a study looked at almost 1,600 men between 51 and 81 years without diabetes. And of course, a healthy eating plan was associated with lower blood glucose and better insulin sensitivity. And this was regardless of whether a person had a genetic risk of type 2 diabetes or not. The healthy eating part, well, that's not really anything new. It's just more research to confirm the fact. I guess the interesting thing was that even with a higher genetic risk of type 2 diabetes, you have some control over the outcomes, and focusing on a healthy eating plan is very, very important. In the study, the unhealthy diets were high in fried potatoes or French fries, hamburgers, pizza, refined pasta or rice, sweet pastries, candy, savoury pies and pastries, savoury snacks, ice cream or puddings, French rolls and baguettes or other white breads, sweet cookies, biscuits, etc. As we can see, we're talking about lots of refined and processed food that is loaded with added sugar and high in carbohydrates, and also very nutrient-poor food. Okay, before we move on with more research bites, let's hear a testimonial from one of our members.
Gloria said, 3 months ago, my A1C was 8.7, and my recent blood work showed it at 7.4. My endocrinologist was very impressed and thinks I will be at the target level by my next testing in 3 months. The recipes are easy, quick, and good. Thank you for your dedication to diabetes research and food plans.
To highlight again the importance of nutrient-dense foods having multiple health benefits, a UK Biobank study highlighted that flavonoid-rich foods can help reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes. The population study involved over 113,000 participants, revealed that a higher intake of flavonoid-rich foods like tea and berries and other foods were associated with a 26% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So key findings included drinking tea, black or green tea, can maybe give you a 21% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes with 4 servings a day, so 4 cups of black or green tea a day. And eating berries, a 15% lower type 2 diabetes risk with 1 serving a day. So certainly consider including tea and berries in your daily eating routine. Most natural foods will provide many health benefits due to the compounds they contain, the flavonoids and polyphenols, for example, which again is why we encourage nutrient-dense foods. On to another topic. If you've never heard of bisphenol A or BPA, it's a chemical found in many plastic water bottles and food containers. For a long time, the evidence linking BPA to health issues has been observational. And this means it's shown an association but couldn't prove that BPA was the direct cause of any of the health problems that different studies had talked about. However, a groundbreaking new study has provided some direct evidence that BPA can reduce insulin sensitivity, potentially increasing the risk of type 2 diabetes. The study found that even levels of BPA currently considered safe by the Environmental Protection Agency may impair insulin response. And this suggests that we might need to reconsider our exposure to BPA and opt for alternatives like stainless steel or glass bottles. And certainly with your drinking water, I would recommend you need to be conscious of this and use stainless steel or get BPA-free plastic water drinking bottles. But it's interesting, This concern over BPA is part of a broader awareness about environmental contaminants and their potential long-term health effects upon all of us. And recent research has also shown that microplastics, which can infiltrate human cells, might pose serious health risks to us all, being found everywhere from our lungs to our reproductive organs, which is very concerning. There is ongoing research in these areas, but it does highlight the fact that our modern environment plays a role in our overall health as well. The last thing I wanted to cover today was the crazy, inaccurate stuff I sometimes come across, or probably frequently come across, when browsing the Wild West Web. This stuff, it does really frustrate me because it gives people absolutely wrong advice, and in doing so is going to keep people from getting better results with their health, or can sometimes be harmful as well. For instance, I came across an article titled "Best Diet Plans for People with Diabetes Reviewed by Experts." When I see headlines like that, I always think, okay, here we go. The article kicked off with promoting the diabetes plate method, which is a method the American Diabetes Association uses, which allows selection of food choices. And essentially, 1/4 of your plate can be carbohydrate foods like whole grain rice, quinoa, and starchy vegetables like potato and pumpkin. This is equivalent to 3 choices of carbohydrate, which is around 45 grams of carbohydrates. Now, that's quite a lot at one meal. Further down the article, the nurse/diabetes educator recommended people consume 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per meal. Granted, not all of the article was bad, but the carbohydrate recommendations are out of line. At 60 grams per meal, a person with any kind of diabetes will struggle to lower blood sugar and A1C, lose weight and reduce meds, so it's just not sound advice. Unfortunately, I saw this same advice recently on the Australian National Diabetes Service Scheme site. I'm always looking around the globe, Diabetes UK, Diabetes Canada, American Diabetes Association, all of these countries to see what they are sharing with people. On this site, the carbohydrate course they provide and their carbohydrate counting and quick checklist recommended 30 to 45 grams of carbs per meal for women and 45 to 60 grams of carbs per meal for men. I also had one of our members recently bring a similar thing up. She said, "I had available to me a program to help with weight loss and getting diabetes, prediabetes under control. This was offered through my health plan. I also participated in an online prediabetes class. The weight management prediabetes class suggested that each meal, 3 meals a day, have 45 grams of carbohydrates per meal. How can that be?" she said. As I said to her, unfortunately, this is common and it isn't sound advice. This type of information is outdated and even harmful to people. So as I said, it makes me a bit frustrated. Research doesn't support these recommendations, and yet people are giving unsound advice everywhere. It's all out of date and shows people are not aware of current science. I've seen this for years, unfortunately. If you listen back to episode 9, we did a diabetes guidelines investigated, and I covered that the carbohydrate recommendations are one of the biggest issues that still stands in the medical care guidelines in diabetes. And clearly this is a fact and a case that, again, makes me a bit frustrated. In any case, I wanted to note this for you today, just to keep an eye out across the Wild West Web, because it's more common than not to come across inaccurate and outdated information. And when it comes to implementing that advice into your life, it may in fact do you more harm than good. Just keep your sheriff detective hat on as you browse the Wild West Web. Well, that's all from me. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, number 43, with a mix mash of topics. As I stressed at the beginning, with the growing rates of diabetes, we really need your help in spreading the word about us, about DMP, about the T2 Diet program, about type 2 diabetes talk, because the stuff we do is helping people achieve these goals and we need to help more people do this. Please share a link to our site on social media, recommend our site or our podcast to family, friends or colleagues who may need it. And if you're a regular listener to the podcast, please take the time to leave a rating on Apple, Spotify, or over on our website. As I said before, this all really helps us reach more people, and the more people we can reach, the more lives we can impact and change for the better. Only together we can make that change. Together we can make a big difference. All right then, take care until next week. Dr. Jetta, over and out.
Thanks for tuning in to Type 2 Diabetes Talk. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. And for episode replays, episode notes, and more, visit type2diabetestalk.com. New episodes are available Tuesdays, 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, or your time zone equivalent. Thanks again. We're truly grateful to be a part of your life and help make a real difference.